them all what I'm made up. Strut down the hall, won't stop till I get enough.
Your folks ever feel like the global economy's got its own secret language?
Yeah, it can feel that way for sure.
Yeah. Tons of stuff happening all at once. But good news, today we're breaking it down, like seriously in depth.
Yeah, we're focusing on some really big moves by former President Trump on the trade front. He declared April 2nd, this coming Tuesday, as Liberation Day.
Liberation Day sounds pretty dramatic.
Right, but it basically comes down to a whole new wave of tariffs on imports. And for everyone listening, this is the kind of stuff that matters.
Big time.
It's not just political back and forth. It's about your wallet.
Yeah.
Like the cost of things you buy, the whole economy.
Exactly. So today we're deep diving into a report from the Associated Press. They've laid out the timeline of all this, what's already happening, and what's about to go down.
Yeah, we want to cut through the spin, get to the heart of how this could really play out in the real world.
All right, so Liberation Day, April 2nd. Trump keeps using that phrase.
He does.
What's he getting at with that?
Well, his idea is that this is the day the U.S. starts to break free from depending so much on goods made in other countries. And his main tool for this liberation, is tariffs.
Tariffs. Okay, so basically taxes on imported stuff.
Right. And a big concept he's pushing is reciprocal tariffs.
Reciprocal?
Yeah, so if another country hits American products with a certain tariff, we would aim to put a similar tariff on their goods coming into the U.S. The idea being to level the playing field, in theory.
Great, level the playing field. Got it. So big day coming up, Tuesday, April 2nd. But from this AP report, it sounds like even with this big date set, we don't totally know how these reciprocal tariffs are going to actually work, right?
Right. There's still some mystery there. The report says White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirmed yesterday that Trump will reveal his plan for these tariffs on Wednesday. And this plan will cover pretty much all of our trading partners.
Wow, nearly everyone.
Yeah, but what we don't know yet is the specifics. Like, will there be specific duties on certain products or like broader percentages applied across entire industries or some other method entirely? We'll have to wait and see.
So big announcement coming, but the details that really matter are still unknown.
Exactly.
And this report makes a good point. With Trump and trade, things don't always go exactly as planned, do they?
Yeah, there have been times when stuff gets delayed or scaled back or even completely changed from what was originally announced. So, April 2nd is the date, but things could shift.
Flexibility is key.
Absolutely. Now, to be fair, there are reasons why people support these tariffs, right?
Oh, of course. There are always two sides to every story.
Yeah, the report lays out some of the arguments. One big one is protecting American industries, right? Shielding them from what some see as unfair competition from foreign companies.
Makes sense.
Then there's the idea that tariffs can bring in more money for the government. And maybe most importantly, the idea that tariffs can be a bargaining chip in international trade negotiations. Kind of force other countries to make deals that are more favorable to the U.S.
Interesting. So tariffs as a negotiating tactic. But, I gotta imagine not everyone's on board with this.
Yeah. The report also highlights concerns from some economists. They're worried that if these tariffs are too broad, especially if the rates are high, it could actually end up hurting the economy.
Hurt the economy? How so?
Well, for one, it could push up prices for just about everything.
Ooh, that wouldn't be good.
No, definitely not. It would hit regular people right in their wallets. It would also make it harder for businesses to buy the materials they need, and if other countries retaliate with their own tariffs, it could hurt American companies trying to sell their products overseas.
Yeah, it's all connected. And the report points out that the economic climate is already kind of shaky, right? Like existing tariffs and all this uncertainty about trade policy are already having an impact.
Yeah, for sure. We're already seeing some jitters in financial markets, and consumer confidence has dipped a bit. When people are uncertain about the future, they're less likely to spend money, and businesses are less likely to invest and hire.
Makes sense. So these new tariffs are kind of landing in an already complex situation.
Exactly.
All right. So while we wait for the full reveal on Liberation Day, we do know about some specific tariffs that are going into effect super soon, like right away, April 2nd and 3rd. Let's start with Venezuela.
Okay, so for Venezuela, the report says there'll be a 25% tariff on any and all imports from any country that buys oil or gas from Venezuela.
25% on everything. Wow.
Yeah, and get this, that includes the U.S. Even if we buy oil from Venezuela, those imports will be hit with that tariff. And on top of that, there are even more new tariffs, specifically targeting goods coming directly from Venezuela itself.
So it's like a double whammy on Venezuela.
It is. And the interesting thing is, this Venezuelan tariff is really broad. You know, it's not just about goods coming from Venezuela directly. It applies to anything coming from any country that's buying Venezuelan oil or gas.
So that could have ripple effects way beyond Venezuela.
Exactly. It could impact global energy markets, companies with international supply chains. You know, if you're using Venezuelan oil or gas at any point in your process, you can get caught up in this.
Wow, a lot to unpack there. Okay, and then right after that, starting Thursday, April 3rd, we have a big one.
Yeah, automobiles. 25% tariff on imported cars.
25%, that's huge.
It is. And the report says it starts at midnight for fully assembled cars imported from other countries.
Okay, midnight Thursday.
And then over the next few weeks, through May 3rd, the tariff will also be applied to various car parts.
So if you're thinking about buying a new car anytime soon, imported or domestic.
Yeah, you might want to do your research. Because the White House is saying they expect this to bring in something like $100 billion a year.
$100 billion? That's a lot of money.
It is. But the economists in this report are raising red flags again.
What are they concerned about this time?
Well, the auto industry is really complex, right? Global supply chains, parts moving back and forth across borders all the time. These tariffs could really disrupt that whole system.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And that would mean higher costs for car manufacturers, which would likely mean higher prices for anyone buying a new or used car.
This is already making my head spin.
I know it's a lot. And there's this whole other thing going on with Canada and Mexico.
Our neighbors. What's happening with them?
So the report mentions that there's currently a pause on tariffs for a lot of the stuff we import from Canada and Mexico. This includes things related to the auto industry and also anything covered under the USMCA trade agreement.
USMCA, that's the new NAFTA, right?
Exactly.
Right. Okay, so what about this pause?
Well, it was supposed to end in early April. Trump even mentioned April 2nd specifically for Mexican imports under USMCA in a Truth Social post. But it seems like there's no official confirmation yet on whether these tariffs are actually going to come back or when.
So we're kind of in limbo with Canada and Mexico.
A little bit. I mean, this pause on tariffs suggests they're trying to be careful, because our economy is so tied together, especially in North America.
Makes sense.
But still, this possibility of the tariffs coming back is a big deal. It creates so much uncertainty for businesses that depend on those cross-border supply chains. Makes you wonder about the future of those trade relationships,
Yeah, tough situation. Okay, so that's what's coming up. But we also need to talk about what's already in place, right? Like, there are already tariffs on a bunch of stuff.
Right.
Let's start with China. This report says since February 4th, everything imported from China has been subject to a 10% tariff. And then, get this, on March 4th, that rate doubled to 20%.
Wow, that's a big jump. And as you might expect, China's not just sitting back and taking it. They've hit back with their own tariffs on a whole range of American products.
Tit for tat.
Exactly. So they've got a 15% tariff on things like coal and liquefied natural gas, 10% on crude oil, and tariffs up to 15% on some major American agricultural exports.
So this is hurting businesses on both sides.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
This is a classic example of how tariffs can escalate. One side does something, the other side retaliates, and it can spiral from there.
Yeah, no winners in a trade war.
Nope. Okay, and then there's the whole steel and aluminum situation.
Yeah, what's going on with that?
So according to this report, things have gotten a lot more intense since March 12th. Now, there's a 25% tariff on all steel and aluminum imports, no exception.
And if it's across the board.
Yeah, they got rid of some exemptions that used to exist for certain types of steel, and they actually increased the tariff on aluminum from what it was back in 2018.
So this affects way more than just the steel and aluminum industries themselves, right?
Oh, yeah. Think about all the things that use steel and aluminum. Construction, manufacturing, packaging. This could have a ripple effect across a ton of industries.
And when those industries have to pay more, who ends up footing the bill?
Well, likely us, the consumers. Higher prices for all kinds of things.
Yeah, it all comes back around.
It does. And even though Canada and Mexico have that temporary break on some tariffs, they're not totally off the hook. Other imports from those countries are still being hit with tariffs. There's like a 10% duty on potash and Canadian energy products.
And how are Canada and Mexico responding to all this?
Well, Canada's been pretty aggressive. They've put billions of dollars worth of retaliatory tariffs on American goods, specifically in response to the steel and aluminum tariffs.
So they're not playing around?
Not at all. I mean, it shows how interconnected our economies are, and how quickly things can escalate.
Yeah, for sure. What about Mexico?
Well, interestingly, they haven't announced any new formal tariffs yet. The report kind of hints that maybe they're still hoping things can calm down, even though they've talked about retaliation before.
Interesting. So they're taking a slightly different approach. All right, so we've covered what's happening now and what's about to happen. But what about the future? Does the report give any clues about what other tariffs might be coming down the pike?
Well, the report mentions that Trump has talked about possibly putting import taxes on a whole bunch of other stuff. We're talking copper, lumber, pharmaceutical drugs, even computer chips.
Wow, that's a huge range.
It is, and those are all pretty essential things, right?
Yeah, for all kinds of industries.
Exactly. So tariffs on those things could have a really big impact on the economy. And from what we're seeing, it seems like a lot of countries are ready to fight back if that happens.
Yeah, we already talked about Canada.
Right. And the report also says the European Union is planning to hit back with countermeasures targeting around $28 billion worth of American goods.
$28 billion? That's a lot of money.
It is. They're going after steel and aluminum, of course.
Yeah.
But also things like beef, bourbon, motorcycles, peanut butter, jeans, all sorts of stuff.
So this is going to hit American businesses and consumers where it hurts.
Yeah, definitely. And it just goes to show that these trade disputes can really blow up. They affect so many different products, so many different industries, so many different people.
Yeah, it's a global web.
It is.
Yeah.
And with Liberation Day just a couple of days away, I think we're going to see a lot more of this, a lot more retaliation for other countries, especially once we see exactly what Trump's plan is.
So this week could be a turning point.
For sure. Lots at stake.
Okay, so let's recap for everyone listening. What are the key takeaways from this deep dive into the AP report?
Okay, so first of all, there's still a lot we don't know about exactly how Liberation Day is going to work. The details of those reciprocal tariffs are still a bit of a mystery. But we do know that new tariffs on imports from Venezuela and on cars are coming very, very soon. And we've already got those tariffs on Chinese goods, the expanded steel and aluminum tariffs, and the situation with Canada and Mexico, with Canada already hitting back pretty hard. Plus, there's the possibility of even more tariffs on a whole range of other products.
And the potential for a lot more retaliation from other countries. It's a lot to keep track of.
It is, but it's important. These trade actions can have a real impact on all of us.
Absolutely. They affect prices, they affect businesses, they affect the whole economy. So, as we wrap up, we want to leave you with a question. Think about how these tariffs, both the ones coming soon and the ones already in place, might affect your own life.
Yeah, think about the things you buy, the businesses you interact with, the overall economy.
And think about the bigger picture, too. What do you think the long-term consequences of these trade policies might be? Not just for the U.S., but for the whole world. It's a complicated issue with a lot of moving parts, and we all need to be paying attention.
Definitely a lot to think about.
That's it for our deep dive today. Thanks for listening.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're Barbie doll. Show them all what